Okay, Bashem Yahawashai Hamashayak. This is your brother Zaquan Shapat Parazah, which is Elder Judge Parazah of Banya Yasharahla, where we uphold Yahawashai, we uphold the Torah, and we uphold our nationality and identity as the 12 tribes of Israel, which are the blacks, Hispanics, and Indians in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean, some of the Igbo and the Ashanti that we find in West Africa, some of the Kikuyu and Israelites scattered into East Africa, as well as the Sidi in India, and as well as the Kafir people in Sri Lanka. Today we're going to be going over some scriptures pertaining to the law. The laws about government. There's a lot of talk about government, but how many people have actually studied the laws from the Torah about government before we try to create a government or put a government together or define our own Israelite government? We must first go into the Bible, into the Torah, and see what are the auspices of government, what are the boundaries and the framework of government given unto us by the Most High Power, Yahweh. So here I have a section taken from my book, which is a Sapar Torah Yasharahla, the book of the instruction or the law of Yasharahla. And this is section 8. If you can see that clearly. It's section 8, dealing with the true and legal government of Yasharahla. Okay, I know it's backwards. That's how it's going to be for right now. So I'm going to just go right into it. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read the law, the understanding of the law. I'll show the page to you so you can freeze the frame if you choose to afterwards and see where the particular laws are being read from. Okay. Now this excerpt of section 8 is from a law book that was the law book may be available for sale again. And every elder was given a copy of this law book. We'll start with these are laws pertaining to Levites, priests, judges, dealing with Levite priests, judges, officers, rulers, and elders. Okay. Exodus 18:21-24. We're commanded to set up rulers to judge people at all times. Okay. Exodus 20:16. We're commanded not to bear false witness against our neighbors. So if you don't know something happened, or if you weren't there, if you weren't a witness to it, you can't testify. Okay. The first one I read, set up rulers to judge the people at all times, deals with at every season of our existence on this planet, we must have rulers, and those rulers are supposed to be able to judge us. Now, when we go into the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 17, it says, obey them that have the rule over you. So this is also applicable to judges that are ruling over us. Okay. The next law I want to go into is don't take a gift. It blinds the wise and it perverts righteous words. So a gift being received from somebody can blind somebody that's judging and cause them to make a decision based on the benefit that they get from that person. That's in Exodus. That's in Deuteronomy 16:19. Now from Exodus chapter 23, verse 20 through 22, we have beware of and obey the angel of Yahweh. The angel that Yahweh, the voice of the angel of Yahweh that Yahweh sent before us, provoke him not. Okay. This is talking about Yahawashi Hamashayak. He's the angel that was sent before us. We have to obey all of the legal injunctions, all the legal adjustments that he makes. For example, in the book of Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 through 25, we read about the terms of marriage between a man and a woman. However, once we go into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24, we see a different set of parameters that we don't see in Genesis. So what Hamashiach did, which is the messenger of Yahweh, the angel of Yahweh that we read about in Exodus 23, verses 20 through 22, he takes us back to the original expectation of marriage laid down by the Father from Genesis chapter 2, verse 21 through 25. He's not changing it. He's taking it back to the original standard. Now, next law is about Leviticus chapter 10, verse 9. A priest cannot drink strong drink or wine when they're going out to the tabernacle of the congregation. So a priest cannot be inebriated, under the influence, or drunk with any intoxicant whatsoever when he's going to the tabernacle of the congregation, which is the people. Leviticus 10:10, a priest must put a difference between the holy and the unholy, between the clean and unclean. Leviticus 10:11, the priest must teach the children of Yasharahla, the Banya Yasharahla, all of the statutes of Yahweh. Okay, now this is the priest, even though all Levites have to do this job also, but they don't have to do it on the strength of this is something that's commanded to the priest. They have to do it on the strength of that this is something that was put upon the Levites in when we go into the book of Deuteronomy chapter 33, and when we see around verse 10 about the Levites are supposed to teach the judgments and the law unto Jacob and Israel, Yasharahla and Ya'iqab. Okay. The next section goes into do no unrighteousness in judgment. That means you have to judge according to the law of the Torah. You can't be unrighteous and wicked in your judgment based on your prejudices, your preconceived notions, or your way that you want to do things. You have to go by the biblical protocols of how to do things. Okay. That's in Leviticus 19, verse 15 and 35. We're commanded to be unbiased and fair toward the poor and toward the mighty in judgment. That's Leviticus 19 and 15. You can't be fair to somebody or unfair to somebody based upon them having money or being poor. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 13. Take wise and understanding men to be rulers. These are men that were not brawlers, that were not contemptuous, that were not covetous, that went according to righteous standards. These were men that were upholding an example of truth and righteousness according to the law, not according to people's feelings, but according to the law. We have to judge our neighbor in righteousness. We have to judge our neighbor in righteousness according to Leviticus 19 and 15. And these are things that are shown to the men that were rulers to be wise and understanding in Deuteronomy 1:13. Now, we have to take chief wise and known men as captains and officers. So the captains and the officers of the children of Yasharahla, I think that the captain is coming from the word shar, which is a ruler. And then the officers is coming from the word shatar, which is a ruler slash magistrate, judicial officer, and an enforcement officer also. Okay. Um, Take chief, wise, and known men to be captains and officers. Deuteronomy 15. Captains and officers also to be judges to hear causes between brethren. Deuteronomy 1:16. So remember that this word captain is shar, which means a ruler, all right, or a prince, if you will, a prince in the a prince in the way of being a ruler, not a prince, the son of a king. A captain and an officer is a shatar, which is a ruler, a legislative, and a magistrate type of enforcement officer. Okay, um, you can look up shoter, and that's going to be the word soter. And the word captains there in the modern Hebrew is going to say sar, sar. Now, moving on, the judges must judge righteously between man and brother and the stranger, which is Deuteronomy 1:16. So any stranger that dwells among us has an expectation of justice and fair treatment by the law. Brothers and men that dwell among us have the same expectation of fairness and non-biased judgment based on the commandment that we are supposed to be living by. Judges must judge righteously. Righteously meaning according to the laws of Yahweh and fairly in balance. Okay, even if you have a repeat offender, you're supposed to take every case as if it's the first time this person has appeared before you, as if you're judging the actions of an angel of the Most High. That way, you know in your mind you're clear of prejudice, you're clear of bias, and you're clear of any thing that people can accuse you of. Okay. Um, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 17, and Deuteronomy 16 and 19 tells us not to respect persons in judgment, meaning show no favor because a person is your friend or an elder or a teacher. Show no favoritism toward them in your judgment. All right. Hear the small and great in judgment. All right. Deuteronomy 1:17. So small matters, big matters, small people, big people. We're supposed to treat everything the same under the Torah. You have witnesses, it's supposed to come forth. Okay. Um, don't fear the face of man in judgment. So if you're faced with a situation where you have to stand up to, your father, if you're a judge, you have to stand up against your father as a witness and or as a judge, or you have to stand up against your elder, all right, as a judge or as a witness. We can't fear man in our judgment. We have to fear the Most High, Yahweh. We can't fear what man can try to do to us according to the judgment that he thinks we should have or the favoritism that he thinks we should be showing him. Okay. Um, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 17 tells us to bring cases that you can't decide before a superior judge. Deuteronomy 1:17. It says, for the judgment is Yahweh, and the call that is hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it. Now we know when we go back into Exodus, the hard case was brought before Yahweh, and then Moses, and then Moses, if he couldn't do it, he took those cases unto Yahweh. So this is basically set up after Moses' death, and once we got set up in Israel, this was set up with the Sanhedrin, or the by Bet Din Gadol, okay, or the Bayath Dayan Gadal, the great house of judgment, which is a court system, which is the central point of rulership of our people. So we brought hard cases to Jerusalem once it left the gates. Now, this is going to coincide also with a law that comes later on in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 17, verse 8. Okay. Deuteronomy 12 and 19. Don't forsake the Levite as long as you live upon the earth. So we're supposed to be helping out the Levite as long as we live upon the earth. Okay. Second page. Every 3 years, a tithe of your increase shall be for the Levite, the stranger, which are the Gentiles, and the fathers, or any stranger rather, that was in your gates, whether they were strangers of Gentiles or strangers of the Israelites that had that didn't have land. Okay. Of our increase was supposed to be for the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow within your gates of your area where you live, and they come and they eat, and when we did this, Yahweh would bless us, and He would bless all the work that we do with our hands. That's from Deuteronomy 14 and 29. Deuteronomy 16:18. Make judges and officers in all your gates. Okay. Deuteronomy 16:18 again. Judges and officers must judge with right judgment. Deuteronomy 16 and 19. Do not wrest or twist proper judgment, meaning don't try to not do a certain part of the law because it's inconvenient for you, because you don't like how it's set up, or because you're not going to get the outcome that you want. Okay. Deuteronomy 16 and 20 tells us to follow that which is altogether just. So those things that we know are 100% righteous and just, those are the things that we're supposed to be following. Any matter that's too hard to judge within your gates shall be heard at the place where Yahweh shall choose. That's Deuteronomy 17 and 18. I told you it's going to come back up again. So this law tells us that the gates of Columbus, Ohio, the gates of Bedford-Stuyvesant, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, okay, the gates of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the gates of Orlando, Florida, the gates of Tampa, Florida, the gates of Oklahoma City, the gates of Detroit, the gates of Kansas and Jerusalem shall judge a matter that is hard in the place where Yahweh chooses, which was Jerusalem. The priests, the Levites, and the judge in those days shall inquire hard matters in the place which Yahweh shall choose. So they had to make these inquiries about these cases in Jerusalem. Okay. The priests, the Levites, and the judge in those days shall show you the sentence in judgment in the place which Yahweh shall choose. So they would tell you what is the final disposition of that case. Guilty, not guilty, dismissed, what have you. You shall obey the sentence of the judicial authority of the place which Yahweh shall choose, in all that they shall inform you. That's Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 10. And a lot of people, I'm sitting back listening and watching to a lot of things that brothers saying, and I'm not disputing them. I'm not confronting them. I'm just listening. And you can't apply this to a lower court. A brother might think this is applying to a lower court, but it's clearly applying to the highest court of the land in Jerusalem. It's not applying to a lower court within the gates of our captivities. And if you have a replacement for the court of Jerusalem in the land of your captivity, it still doesn't apply to a lower level judge jurisdiction within the gates. It's applying to a higher level judge system, which, remember, now these judge systems were made up of men from different tribes. The 70 elders at Jerusalem that were ruling represented you and your tribe. They didn't, or they weren't represented by different camps of Israelites. So you had somebody that was going to mitigate or litigate on your behalf, that was going to look out for your best interest if you were good, or if you were compliant to the Torah. They had an obligation to defend you once that case got up to Jerusalem. But if you were wrong, you found yourself without allies in a righteous system. So once again, Deuteronomy 17:10 is referring to who? Is referring to a higher court system, okay? Has to be obeyed. The lower court system does also, but it's a reason why you have to specifically state that this law is not talking about a lower jurisdictional proceeding, because remember, the lower jurisdictional proceeding has already deferred the case to a superior court. And once the case gets deferred to a superior court, then there's another set of conditions, parameters that court has to apply in their duty. Deuteronomy 17:11 says that do not decline from the sentence of the law of the judicial authorities which are in Jerusalem, that superior court system. Okay. Now, very important. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 12. Capital punishment, meaning death, for a man which deliberately disregards the sentence that the priest that ministers before Yahweh dispenses, or disregards the judge at Jerusalem at that superior court system. Okay, so now this is the law. So we have to do exactly. We can't add to it, and we can't take away from it. Okay, we have to do things according to what the law tells us. The next law is from Deuteronomy 17:15. Set a ruler over you as a king that Yahweh has chosen. Now, we're going to apply this law, okay, to the book of Hosea, chapter 1, verse 11, when it says the house of Judah and the house of the children of Judah and the children of Israel are going to be gathered together. And we're going to appoint us one. It says we're going to appoint a leader over us, one head. Okay, we're going to appoint one head, and then we're going to come out of the land. So that's why I love to focus on the Torah and Hamashiach and the Ruach HaKodesh working and manifesting through you with the spirit of obedience, which is the most important, okay, thing that we can do once we read Yahweh's word, is to obey it from our heart. So once we apply Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 1 through 3, and we repent, we turn from our sins, we keep the commandments, then we come into more unity. And then we get together, the children of Judah and the children of Israel. We gather together, and then we appoint ourselves one head. So this head would be equivalent to what we read in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15. And we're getting close to that time now. And that's why the Most High is, Yahushua is letting people go through the sifter to make sure that these men that are promoting themselves as leaders are indeed leaders that are Torah compliant, not leaders that are their own opinion compliant, or white man's rules compliant, or Torah or captivity excuse compliant, but that are Torah compliant. You may not set a king over you, which is a stranger, which is not your brother. Okay, that's still Deuteronomy 17 and 15. Deuteronomy 17 and 16. The king shall not multiply horses. All right. The king shall not cause the people to return to Egypt. So you ain't supposed to be going to Egypt. That's what the law says. We know we ran there as refugees, but we didn't go there and take vacations. The king shall not multiply wives. Now remember, the same language used for horse is the same language used for wives in terms of the prohibition not to multiply your wives and not to multiply horses. So if you think it's okay for a man to have 3 horses, then you must also think it's okay for a man to have 3 wives, because the same law is given to each of those possessions. Don't multiply horses, and don't multiply wives. Also, the king shall not multiply to himself gold and silver. You see? You can't multiply gold and silver. All right? You can't multiply gold and silver. When the king sits on his throne, he shall write a copy of the law in a book from the copies that the priests and the Levites have in the repository of holy books at the temple at Jerusalem. And of course, we can't do that now. The king shall read the book of the law all the days of his life. Deuteronomy 17, verse 19 through 20. Now, this next law is going into Yahawashi Hamashiach. Okay, and the law tells us, okay, listen to the prophet that Yahweh raises like Moses from your brothers, from the children of Yasharahla. All right, this is not talking about Muhammad. It's talking about Yahawashi Hamashiach. Now, according to Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 22, when a prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh, if the thing doesn't happen, the scripture says, do not fear him. The next one goes into unsolved murder or unsolved homicide. The elders of a city where a murder has occurred shall send and fetch for the murderer and deliver him to the avenger of blood. So if you murdered somebody and they found out you murdered somebody, you were given to a person that was working for the family of the victim that would kill you. All right. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, very important law. One witness shall not establish the guilt of an offender. So you need witnesses to process a case. You need 2 witnesses to process a case. It says that one witness shall not establish the guilt of an offender. An offender shall be found by 2 or 3 witnesses. It doesn't say have a vote about it. It doesn't say have a vote. It says 2 or 3 witnesses have to establish the guilt of the person. According to Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 16 through 19, he shall receive the punishment for the defendant, in that if a man says Parazah did something wrong, he should be punished with a year suspension. And you find out that that man lied on Parazah. Well, that man now is supposed to be suspended for a year because he raised up himself as a false witness. The law is simple. It's clear cut. All right. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 17. a defendant witness before the priest and judges. Okay, so the priests and judges heard this matter of the false witness, and they would adjudicate this. Now, remember, the reason you're saying the witness is false is because the case has already been dispensed. There's a disposition on the case now. The man's been found guilty, or you can say he's been found innocent, but you find out that somebody lied. Okay, you know, he could be guilty, but he could be guilty of doing something in a red outfit, and you said that it was you swore that it was a blue outfit. That's a false testimony. You can say you don't know, but you can't say you saw a color that you didn't see. Okay, you can say that, but you can't just outright lie. You can't just go off of what somebody told you, not even your wife.